Hello and welcome back to the meta64 podcast. This is a podcast where I interview creators about their creative process, what they do, and how they do it. And I'm here with podcast host Queen Boudicca. I think I'm pronouncing that name right. I'm not 100% sure. Am I?
It's pronounced Boudicca.
Boudicca, thank you. Boudicca is the host of Records from the Records from the Reaver podcast, which is a sci-fi story-based podcast available now on Spotify, and also a friend of a friend who I believe was recommended to me by that friend. So it's great to have you on. I've been very excited because I actually had the chance to listen to your podcast before we recorded today.
I'm excited to be here. I just want to clarify that I'm not really the host, but I am the producer.
Ah, okay. Sorry, I just wanted to quickly clear that out. That kind of gets rid of things, but we'll work with it. So we're gonna get some boring questions out of the way, and then we'll get into the more interesting ones. So, who are you? What type of content do you help to create and or produce?
Uh, yeah, okay. My name is Boudicca Eades, and I am a poet and a writer and a producer. And my latest project is Records from the Reaver, which is a sci-fi audio drama, um, focusing on a group of kids in a space police academy who realize that the government they work for is kind of evil.
Um, what got you to help produce this podcast? What exactly about it spoke out to you?
Well, I
Yes.
had a friend who was really into fiction podcasts, and I have kind of grown up on like Radio 4, like radio dramas here in the UK. Um,
Mm.
and my friend knew who is the co-writer of Records from the Reaver, was writing their own podcast, and it was really great. And it kind of became a medium primarily that I was interested in, kind of as something to tell stories because I've always been interested in telling stories. Um, and I kind of had a conversation with them and was like, how come we've never written anything together? Because they're extremely talented. Um, and then the kind of I came up with an idea and I brought it to them and we discussed it further. And then I was like, right, I'll go away and write this, um, and then give it to you for editing. And that's kind of how it started. Was kind of through the interest of a friend, I think. Yeah.
Interesting. You said that person was Moo, correct?
New.
New. Okay, I thought it was a
Yeah.
person. What inspires you?
Uh, Lots of things. I think what primarily inspires me is I love telling stories, of people whose stories maybe get told less, because I think first of all that's really important, and also the more unique an experience is, the more interesting it is to kind of look at. And I think also just seeing other creative people around me really inspires me a lot, to do what I do. Um, yeah.
Right. So we kind of touched on this earlier when I was asking you why what you produced, but you've already said you helped produce records from the Reaver, and your friend New came to you came to New with the idea. Why did you choose to pursue it in mainly podcast form and not in a different form like video and or like through webcomic or something?
Um, for me, it's really important to create a professional product. Um, and for the scope of story that I wanted to tell, I thought audio was the best format to do that, because it takes a lot less, not in terms of effort, but in terms of production cost and everyone being able to work remotely. It was really important to me that it wasn't just me and my friends on this project, that it was something we could audition for and get people from around the world taking part in. Um, and so we had to work remotely. And also the format of audio, just having it audio plays into the actual like the actual framing device and setting of the story, because the idea is that it's kind of narrated by this character, investigator Ezra Barnett, who is looking through old surveillance like audio, surveillance audio, of to uncover kind of what happened aboard this spaceship. Um, so yeah, it was part the story we wanted to tell. The fact that New was interested in it. New had written an audio like fiction podcast before, um, and also they have skills in audio engineering and things like that, and I don't. Or well, I'm starting to get more into the audio side of things, but they had those skills. That was what they were interested in. It worked for the story I wanted to tell, and also it worked for the way I wanted to produce it.
Okay, so earlier we also discussed that you were a producer. Do you fill any other roles in the creation and or production of Records from the Reaver?
Yes. So technically, I'm the creator, because, if you will, because I wrote really the entire first act and then gave it to New for editing. I'm
Mm-hmm.
also the lead writer and the director as well as producer. And I've now stepped into some of the audio engineering, doing some of the special effects on the episodes.
Um, were you in charge of the casting for Records from the Reaver by any chance?
It was kind of the first act was kind of split between New and I. I was primarily in charge, but New definitely had their own opinions, and those opinions were voiced, and um, some of them did like affect the casting. Then for Act Two, I made all the decisions, but New kind of agreed. We kind of were in agreement on those decisions.
Okay, so what was the process of choosing the cast for Records from the Reaver?
Well, okay, so we first had to make like character profiles for each of the characters we were auditioning for, and then there were other characters that we weren't specifically auditioning for, as in we didn't have like extracts for them, like for actors to read for those characters, but we would be casting for them, of course. And then we kind of set up some stuff on Casting Call Club, and we put it out on Reddit, and we had like a whole Google form and stuff. So that was all like the practical stuff just to get it out there. We also put it out on like Instagram and TikTok and social media. And then for the actual process um of how we cast people, so obviously we listened to everyone kind of as they came in, and we kept them, and we kind of thought, oh, that would be a good fit, or maybe that voice would be more suited to this character. It was really important to us that we didn't really have any accent requirements, or like gender requirements really for the roles. For a couple roles we did have like suggested accents, just because we were like, we kind of imagined this character this way, but we were very open to hearing any other interpretations.
Okay.
And we got a lot of auditions actually. I was quite surprised. I think a lot of them came in from Reddit. And then the way we cast it is we first of all we kind of had to take out like the people we were definitely not casting, either because just some of it was unfortunately just practical stuff, like their audio quality really wasn't great, and because everyone records remotely, everyone needs to have some amount of kind of decent audio quality. Um, and then so there were some people who just we thought were just weren't right. And then we kind of had a list of like, okay, all of these actors, maybe that could be a Jacob, or that could be an Ingrid, or that could be a Kay. And then we narrowed it down from then. We also had a couple actors who were like, we were like, these are really interesting and good, and like these are good voices, and these are interesting actors. And we didn't know who we wanted to cast them as, but we knew we wanted to cast them because of their voice was more unique. Because another thing that's really important is because it's all audio, you need to have everyone sounding kind of different from each other, especially people who are in a lot of scenes together. And then we just went on from there until we had like a couple of picks maybe for each character. And then New and I talked about it, and we were like, okay, this person, definitely the best lane. This person, definitely this. But our picks for people definitely changed a lot right up until the minute that we had fully cast it. Um, like the voice actor who plays Ren, for the entire time I was like this is going to be AJ, this is going to be AJ. And New was like, that doesn't fit, Boudicca. And I was like, no, it does, it does. And then eventually New was like, okay, but what about Ren? And I was like, and we hadn't had any auditions for Ren, which surprised me because I love Ren. And then I looked at it and I thought, oh no, no, that voice definitely fits Ren better now that New had said that. But there was a lot of things that changed right up to the minute of casting. Yeah.
That sounds that's a lot of work just for like getting mainly the main cast all together with their voice actors there.
Yeah. I mean, so it was a lot of work, but it was also quite a short audition period. We only had auditions for open for a month. And then we were having conversations about the casting all throughout that month as submissions were coming in. And then we sat down as soon as auditions closed, essentially. We had a about 2 hour long Zoom call
Mm.
where we just like were like laid it all out. And then I was like, right. And then we sent the emails off during that Zoom call as well. And waited for people to get back because the production, like the turnaround on this project is actually, it's quite demanding. It's very fast. Because we cast, oh, when did we finished we cast at the end of July. Like we had finished that, and then like within the next week, we had heard back from everyone. We had recast anyone who'd like didn't get back to us or like didn't want the role. We'd gotten everyone's like information, everything. We had arranged read throughs, and then we did the read throughs within the week after the casting closed. And then a week later, I spent hours getting together a schedule because we have everyone on a call to record scenes, and because it's a worldwide production, we have 6 time zones amongst the cast and also have people with very differing schedules. So I then had to put together a timetable for recording sessions that worked for everyone, and then set that all up and then double check it, and then we were done recording by the end of August.
Cheers.
Well, for
So
Act 1, at
oh,
least.
for Act One. Yeah. When did the Act Two recording finish up? Did you just now start that, or is it finishing, or did you guys
No,
do it
it's
way in advance?
we finished uh we finished recording at 2. Oh my goodness. We finished like a week into March, I believe. Um yeah, okay, because we cast, yeah, because or it might have been mid-February. I can't quite remember actually at this point. Um but I believe it was mid-March or like end of February, around then, that we finished recording for Act 2.
Mm.
And we've just started releasing episodes for Act 2. Episode 1 actually just came out today of Act 2. So yeah, and then we aim to start recording Act 3 in June.
So now that you've just explained that, Records from the Reaver seems to be recorded in bulk and then released periodically over time. How long does like the production of the full act take, and how long is an act usually?
Well, it depends. Act 1 took a lot longer to release than we had originally planned, because we didn't know what the production was going to be like, and we were kind of learning along the way. So Act 1, so if you can think about it, Act 1 started recording in July, like very beginning of July, last year, and then finished releasing um February of this year. So that's 5 months for an act. And Act 1 is 6 episodes. Act 2 will be 7 episodes, so but it will presumably take probably a similar amount of time, actually probably less, now that we've got our kind of production schedule a little bit more figured out. So Act 2 will probably be finished by like November. Um, yeah, basically. And that's 7 episodes instead of 6. And then Act 3 will be 5. So it depends how many episodes, really. And we're still kind of learning.
Walk me through the creation of a full act, like from conceptualization to recording to editing to release. Like, what's that like?
Okay, so um writing so okay, so the conception of it um is so I had an idea for like the general setting and the kind of themes I wanted to explore, and then I made a vague plan for the overarching plot of all 3 acts because um it was from the beginning. From the very beginning, we knew how many episodes it was going to be. We knew how long it was going to be. It has always had a very solid endpoint, and so the story has been planned kind of quite neatly over 3 acts. Um, and that's also why we call them acts and not seasons. It's not to be pretentious or anything. It's because we want it to be clear that it's all part of one story, as opposed to viewing each act as like its own story. There is a story kind of within each individual act, but really we view it as one story, that it just has breaks between parts. Um, anyway, so I came up with a vague overview for the 3 seasons, and then I made specific plans, like specific to the scene, for all of Act One. So each episode had like a plan for what was going to happen in the episode, what was going to happen in each scene. And as I was writing that according to my plan, things did change because if I came up with new ideas or new came and said, actually, maybe we should change that. But basically, I wrote all of Act One in kind of isolation, and same with Act Two. So I'll write, and then I sent Act Two to New like pretty much complete. But Act One, New was editing kind of as I was writing, but was only looking at episodes when they were complete. So I'd say, oh, episode 1 has been written. You can go and look in that and like edit that now. And so then New was editing. And then when we had finished writing, we then began. Um, we pretty much then began the audition process once we knew what the characters were like that we were auditioning for. We didn't audition until we had written most of Act One. So then we cast, and then we recorded, and so we recorded for about a month, which was I think about 15 recording sessions for Act One. The way we do it is we group scenes by which characters are in them. So if there's like a character who's only in 2 scenes, we will do both of those scenes in one episode. And essentially we try to have like the minimum amount of actors to get the most scenes done in a session. So it would be like between 3 and 5 scenes a session. And so that means that we can like schedule. I would get an idea of what people's schedules were like, which meant I could put them into the calendar easier. And we didn't have anyone who had to miss a session pretty much for all of Act One. We had a lot more people who had to miss sessions or just wouldn't be able to make it for Act Two, just because people's schedules changed. A lot of people started going to like university. We also had just a lot more scenes. The script isn't much longer, but the amount of scenes is more for Act Two. Anyway, so sorry, I'm getting off track. So
No problem.
we would record. I would organize it. I would put like time slots for everyone's scenes into a Google Calendar. I then shared it with everyone. I said, give me feedback, tell me if there's something you can't make. So then people told me, and then I changed the calendar until it worked for everyone. And then we recorded for a month, which was a very fun and very chaotic month. We also had read-throughs actually before the calendar was made, and that was to introduce everyone in the cast. We have like guidelines that everyone needs to follow to be like on the Discord server and things, just to make sure it's like a comfortable space for everyone. So we went
Hmm.
through that. We did a read through with as much of the cast possible there. Of like the whole thing, we did two read throughs, one for like each half of the act because of it's too much to do in one like session. That would be like 4 hours long. So that wasn't gonna be happening. And then after that, after everything was recorded, I then like get all the audio that we've had sent in from actors, and organize it in a Google Drive by episode and then by scene, and all the actors label their files with their character names. And then at the beginning of the process, Nu was doing all of the audio editing. That soon became unsustainable. So the way we have it now is one person cuts and EQs all the dialogue together.
Okay.
And then that gets sent, then split between me and Nu, or then adding in the SFX and the ambience and the music and things like that. And then if Nu has done any SFX, then they send it to me, and then I kind of edit all of the scenes together, and we have like a little click transition in between each scene. And then I add in music and the intro and the credits and things like that. And then I send that to Mark, who is on one of the music like writers and producers, is also a voice actor, and is also one of the like general audio editors. And I send it to him, and he masters the episode. He then sends it back to me, and I release it. And then that continues. That kind of editing process continues until the act is fully released.
That was a pipeline that was like that's a pipeline I can relate to also because my videos also kind of take that long. And
I'm very sorry. That was a very lengthy description.
no, don't apologize. You have nothing to apologize for. That was actually kind of interesting. Really interesting to hear. Who is the team behind Records from the Reaver, by the way? If you're okay with disclosing them publicly.
Who is the team? So okay, so obviously there's me, and then there's Nu, more professionally known as Nolan Edison Finley, who is listed as, if you see Records from the Reaver, it's Boudicca Eades and Nolan Edison Finley, and Nu is the co-writer, kind of head of sound design, and also does all of the Foley, um, which is when you like have to make the noises if we can't find them elsewhere.
Yep.
And then there's Mark, who kind of signed on initially as just part of the cast, but soon took on more responsibility than that. He masters all the episodes. He has done a lot of the kind of the dialogue editing for about half of Act One. And then also, I think I already said this, but he masters the episodes. I think I said that though.
Hmm.
And then we have in addition to Mark, we have a two-person, a two-person music team, and Mark is in the music team, but there's two other people, which is Louis Truffaut, who is Mark's son. He's very talented and also a friend of mine. And then Rudy Reeves McHugh, who worked on some of the music for Act One, but has since left the production. And then we just had a new audio guy join to take up some of the dialogue editing as well.
All right. So, is Records from the Reaver fully independent? Do you have any plans to like sign on to anyone, or do you want to keep this something that's just like fully independent, no strings attached, your full IP, no one has control?
It's definitely an independent project. It's also kind of it's really a passion project. We are very lucky to have the amount of like a talent on our cast and crew that we have, because it is all volunteer work. So it's not something that I think is going to kind of become part of anything else. I think really it is just um, the kind of the passion projects of a couple of students.
Okay, so you said earlier that Records from the Reaver is at maximum 3 acts long. Is there Are there any plans to do anything else with the group you have, with the team you have, beyond Records from the Reaver, or are you guys going to disband and just go your separate ways after Records from the Reaver is complete?
Mm, that's a complicated one because a lot of the so um a few members of the crew are people that I personally know. So obviously New is my friend, and I know Rudy and Louis and Mark like personally. I knew them before this project. Um so we may work together again. And I have already broached the topic of possible other projects that I might do to like members of the cast, but it's kind of in a if I did this, would you be interested in auditioning kind of way? There's no plans to like use the entire existing cast and crew of Records from the Reaver and like transplant them to another project, or anything like that. But definitely these are contacts that I will keep and I hope to see on future projects, because they're really all very wonderful and talented.
Okay, so was Records from the River inspired by any current like sci-fi media? Was there something that like stuck out to you that you kind of implemented into Records from the River here?
Oh, definitely. I think there are a couple of big ones. Um, I mean, I think my love of sci-fi comes from a couple of things. I grew up on things like Star Wars, and also I think it's a really fun medium to have a lot of like diversity in. But more specifically, and more recently, um, I love the She-Ra reboot. And so a lot of kind of I think they it wasn't conscious kind of like, oh, I want to do something like that, but I think it definitely influenced me. But this idea of a very queer, very kind of magical sci-fi kind of adventure, and this whole idea of like um this police academy and things like that. um Definitely I think there are influences in there. um and then also there's a series of books called the Lunar Chronicles, which I started reading, which are more like they are sci-fi. I haven't finished them, but a lot of kind of just the general kind of I think found family vibes. I think I was inspired by that. Um, and then there's also a book called "This Is How We Lose the Time War," which is um, it's a novel written in letters, and it's a sci-fi, and it's just kind of these essentially love letters between these two um, like time traveling agents on different sides of a war. And I think that that kind of idea of two sides of something who both really believe that they're right, and are both kind of actually part of corrupt but different systems, was interesting to me.
Right. So you said at the beginning of this episode and in our own personal discussions that you are mainly a poet. What got you into that?
Oh, think it's something where like I have a really easy answer for that. Um, but I was looking through a lot of my old work from when I was in like primary school, and I think I've always been really interested in poetry and language, I now realize. But the thing that definitely really sparked my interest in writing poetry was watching spoken word poets on YouTube.
Hmm.
The first poetry, like the first one I'm gonna call proper poetry I wrote, was very much like spoken word and slam poetry inspired. That's not really what I do anymore. But it was definitely that. Specifically, this one like publisher, Button Poetry, who they release a lot of videos of their poets, and their poets are primarily a lot of them are spoken word poets. Um, and the first thing I did is I wrote a poem for an art project I was doing, um, which was about like my experience with disordered eating, and it was it was kind of a way to talk about that in an easier, in a less direct manner. Um, and then I think my interest just kind of grew from there.
What do you see poetry as in your eyes? Is it more of an escape for you, or is it just another creative outlet alongside things like Records from the Reaver?
It's definitely more personal to me than Reckless from the Reaver is, because Reckless from the Reaver is a story, and there are a lot of elements of myself in that story because um, every character really you write is in some way part of yourself. You know, um, they all of those characters have traits that I have or have observed in other people, but I think poetry is a lot more personal because the poems that I write aren't really, I guess, they're not about the external world as much as they are about like my internal world. So um it's my relationship with that is it's not really an escape. It's more of like a way to process things. It's kind of it's not to hide from them, but to think about them and deal with them in my own way.
So I got some questions to ask you about what you want to do like in the future with the stuff you. So first things first, where do you want to go with Records from the Reaver and like I guess beyond since once it finishes?
Um, as a member of many fandoms myself, um, it really is kind of a dream of mine to have any to have people interested in what I do. I think um like see people excited about Records from the Reaver. Records from the Reaver, it's kind of a thing where it's like I would love for people to love it. But really it was about initially about just yeah, I can do this thing. I'm gonna try and do this thing that I've never done before. Um,
Mm.
but my goal with that is definitely to like have it reach as many people as possible who can be who might be interested in it. Um, because I think it's a fun little thing. It's not too much of a time investment, really. Um, I really love the characters, so yeah. And I think moving onward, this has been a really good stepping stone for um, just my general experience producing things. I'd never directed anything before, and I went into this project assuming I wouldn't be the director, and then it just kind of worked out that I was the director, um,
Mm.
which has been an interesting journey. Um, but yeah, I think my goal is just to like have it be well, first of all, just kind of almost this is going to sound really basic, but to have it be complete because I think that in of itself is a really big achievement for me. Um, and then also just for people to enjoy it. Um, and then the way this is probably going to affect future projects is I know a lot more about how to be a producer and how to be a director now, and I think there's quite a few ideas for projects I've got going on that I am now confident that I would be able to do.
What do you think that's going to like lead into? Are there any like I guess fields that you want to jump into in the term in like the regards of like production in either online or just like in the entertainment industry in general?
Um, I'm definitely looking at a career in the entertainment industry, preferably as a producer. I've just been accepted to a really amazing and prestigious performing arts school here in the UK for
Mm.
their film and media production course. So that will be the next 2 years for me. Um, and then I think that will lead me. I've always been really really interested in film, but I haven't had the resources to pursue it. So that's something that I will be doing a lot more in the future. Um, I'm also in other kind of mediums. A lot of the projects I've got in my mind are like other maybe kind of shorter or like less commitment heavy audio projects. Like ones that might just be like 3 episodes or 1 episode that I can do without it affecting my coursework. Um, and then also I'm looking at getting a second poetry collection published. So yeah.
Right. Final question we got before we finish up today. Do you have any advice for anyone like getting into production or poetry or any of the things you've been interested in that who may be listening?
Just do it. Um, I do it, but have a clear objective with it. Be that I'm gonna write one poem, or I'm gonna write. So if you want to write a poem, then maybe about the form you want to write it in or the topic, and be like, I'm going to write about this thing, or I'm going to write in this form. Because having kind of strict parameters for yourself, at least at the beginning, is really helpful, or at least it's very helpful to me. Um, but then also, if you want to do something and you have the ability to do it, then do it, because worst things worse, it'll turn out not to be your thing. But if you do it, then that's better than not.
All right. Thank you so very much for agreeing to be on. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear you talk about this stuff.
It's been great to be here.
So, usually what I do at the end of these is I just open the microphone for the person being interviewed to promote their work, either personal or stuff they're working on. So, if you'd like to, go ahead.
Sure. So Records from the River is currently streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, and pretty much all other podcasting services. And you can follow us on Instagram at Records from the River Pod. And then my current poetry book, Birthright, is available on Lulu and on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and I think some other places. And you can follow me at Boudicca Eades on Instagram.
And as per usual, I am meta64 at youtube.com/meta64 was taken. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. We're getting back into the weekly schedule again, which I'm very excited about. So, as per usual, thank you for listening. Go interact with the person being interviewed, and have a good rest of your. I don't know, man. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.